everybody, and welcome to our webinar that involves the early years, which is a lovely change for us that we can focus on the little ones before they go into reception. Today, I have my colleague, Caroline. Would you like to say hello, Caroline?
Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here today and to see you all.
Yeah, and Caroline is part of the Jolly Learning editorial team, but equally she has been a teacher and she has worked on the book with Sarah Wernham that we're going to see today, the Bumper Book of Phonics. Now, before we get started, maybe you would like to put in the chat where you're from, because we're always interested where people who like to see us are from. So please let us know in the chat where you are. We can respond to questions that are short, and we'll respond to longer questions at the end of the session. Also, we do not give certificates for these short webinars, but we have the lovely Kyriaki to answer questions, and also she will put in links for our shop and also any other queries you may have. So where have we got? Wow, look at this. We are global today. Look at this, Trinidad, Tobago, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. This is amazing. Qatar, Spain, lovely. And as you're just letting us know, we're really getting the depth and breadth of people who are interested in the product, and also you're perhaps using them in early years. So let me just do the most nerve-wracking part of any presentation, which is the share screen. So bear with me one moment while I get into that. And I'm usually quite good at this, and we'd have no hiccups. So let me just do this. And there we go. So Caroline and Kyriaki, can you see the screen?
We can.
Yes, we can. Yes, Yvonne.
Okay, so that's perfect that you can see that, because then if they can see it, I know that you can see it. So welcome to our webinar. And we're a bit excited about this, Caroline, aren't we?
We are actually. It's a really lovely opportunity, isn't it, to talk about early years, which maybe doesn't get talked about as much.
That's right. And the one thing about the early years is we know from our point of view how well it is used in the foundation stage, and how it really does support the scaffolding onto the next stage. So you've met us, your presenters for the day, and also we're really going to give you as much information as we can within this hour. So we're going to crack on as much as we can. So what is in our session? Well, we're going to do a very, very quick overview of the phonics program, and you may be very familiar with that, but it's also good to have a look at our starting point, and certainly Caroline's starting point when she worked with Sarah on the book. It's always about looking at what is in the program and how we are scaffolding that foundation knowledge. And also some planning for phonics, Jolly Phonics in the early years, and some ideas that you can take away. And Caroline's going to really give you a great plethora of ideas that come from the book. So I'm looking forward to that part. But just to let you know that the program has been accredited by the Department of Education, which is a very thorough benchmark to have, as we have met all the criteria that's needed to deliver a solid, constructed program that supports children's literacy development. And I would say that over the past 20 years, we have been able to have a global reach that only exemplifies how well this program works. But why use Jolly Phonics in the early years? Now, Caroline, you were a year one teacher, but you have a vested interest in children coming up to year one and having some knowledge. Isn't that correct? How important that is?
Well, years of teaching year one really gives you a strong indication of children coming up having had that basis in phonics, compared to those who haven't. And it makes a massive difference, mostly in their confidence, actually. I would have children coming up who were very confident readers at year one level. So it makes a massive difference. We want children to feel confident. We want children to have a general understanding of sounds, letter sounds. And so this is the perfect way of doing it, just to lay some foundation stages early on.
Yeah.
They can come into Key Stage 1 then and come into year one feeling pretty confident that they know what that's all about.
And I think that is also a very important point to make, is that in looking at from where we're getting them to, it's also mindful from how we get them there and the process as well. So also in the session, we're going to be looking at the multisensory approach, which we really carry on in early years. And also, as Caroline mentioned, that scaffolding of knowledge, which we know meets with cognitive ability as well. And, you know, Sarah and Sue are teachers, and they know just exactly the dynamics of what is required within a classroom. So the program is for teachers, but it was designed by teachers, and that makes a really big difference. So if you're looking at teaching children under the age of 4 or rising up, this is kind of like the phase 1 stage of phonics, and many children are at nursery, and many nurseries do provide some scaffolding on initial sound knowledge, and also that children are becoming aware, that curiosity with sounds. And also it starts generally with their name tag, when they start with registration, going in and finding that little icon, and then they're beginning to think, well, that's my name, and the curiosity of letters are there. But also for you as a practitioner, it's great that if you have this knowledge, you're able to securely use that information in a distilled way to help children along this flight path, so they're ready for when they come to reception class. So in early years, it's a sterling job working with early years. And I'd say that every teacher, it's a vocation that far outweighs the salary, but early years is very hands-on, and equally a child born in January is completely different to a child born in December. And so we're very mindful of that cognitive development and how we have to pace our planning to adjust the child's age and ability. But as a teacher, what do you need to know? I've put the umbrella there, as that's a great way of describing your knowledge. You have a lot of knowledge, not only about the ages and stages of children, their emotional needs, their growth, and also the planning that is required to cover all the areas of the stages of early years development that may be in your country. So regarding phonics, it is a really good idea to have some training. So a full Jolly Phonics training is one of the best ways for you to have that solid foundation of knowledge, so that you can put that into your planning and also know the expectations required using it. So you can see on the left-hand side of my umbrella, I have put what usually helps the teacher to be able to construct a meaningful approach to working with young children. But equally, we always have to look what's on the other side, that when we're working with young children, we have to think of their abilities. We also have to look for the opportunities, and additionally, understanding explicit and passive teaching and learning, because sometimes you may have a great plan for your lesson and then realize it's not going to work because the children are just not engaged and ready. But it doesn't mean you have to throw that away. We just look at it and have it in a different format, or maybe reduce. And this is where, looking at the other side of teachers' knowledge, you know how much to give at that particular time. And I'd say, Caroline, I'm talking about early years, but that's more or less general, even going through reception into year 1, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, you can plan really, really well, and you can get in front of the children and things don't pan out the way that you expected, and that's okay. That really is okay. And you can adapt. Differentiation is very, very important, especially in early years as well, when you've got such a wide range of abilities and confidence in front of you. So Jolly Phonics is great for that. We can adapt, we can use it as we wish and at our pace. At early years level, we can use it at the right pace for us and to suit the children in front of us.
Yeah. So as we've said, our knowledge of using the program with the ages going upwards, and also the materials, and we know the adaptability, and that is why we don't put an age restriction on using certain things at a certain age, but we think about the abilities and also your knowledge as a teacher. And we have some great trainers and also the teacher's book. If you're not familiar about how to deliver a lesson further on in the classroom, you can have a look at the teacher's book, which also can give you foundation knowledge, even if you're working with young children, about what we are doing and the core lesson. So part of the Jolly Phonics program are the 5 key skills, and these are delivered to a lesser and greater degree through all the resource material. When we're working with very young children, we're not expecting them to be able to do all of these, but in some way or another, we are touching on them. I am sure that you are giving representations of letter sounds. You're also probably doing air letters or plasty letters or magnetic letters that children are playing with. The curiosity is starting, but certainly things like blending and segmenting in tricky words may well be out of their scope. So it's mindful to know that although you may benefit from understanding how these all work, some of these elements may be a little challenging for children, certainly tricky words. But I have known nurseries where blending and segmenting has been modeled by the teacher, and she'll say, this is a cat, cat. So she is identifying each phoneme so children are getting aware of what they hear. And this is a really good way to introduce that concept, isn't it, Caroline?
Well, certainly is, and you do have to be mindful. I know certainly from a personal point of view, my daughter could read when she went to nursery. And you have to be mindful of those sorts of children as well. You know, if they can blend and they want to blend, you don't want to stop them. So
Yeah.
again, it's catering for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is where your unique knowledge of your children and your class goes back to that umbrella side where you know how much to give or take. But certainly bringing in this infrastructure into your classroom may be something that could benefit when you have your children. And we'll have a look at different ways that early years approach this as they move on. So we have our 7 groups, and as you can see, the first 3 groups are pretty easy for small children because they tend to be single sounds, except for the k and the k. And we're just drawing awareness to initial sounds when the children are that young, and understanding with air letters or sandpaper letters, or maybe very much continuing our holistic approach with the program that moves on with children further on how to do the sound, and maybe that curiosity with letter formation. The point I'd make is do not force a child to pick up a pencil and pen and make them write. They need to go through that experience of mark making, working with different sizes to get that pincer movement correct, and they just want to explore. Throwing them straight into doing handwriting can be detrimental further on when they just lose interest. What I would say is that when we get to group 4, we're looking at 2 letters making 1 sound. And again, here, it's just raising awareness of these, because some of them are in the middle of a word, like A is in train or snail. We are highlighting the sounds and making observations of the letter formations, the digraph. So it can be lesser or more that children grasp the single sounds quicker than they do the digraphs. And I think that's fair to say, even with children when they move up, isn't it, Caroline?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's more challenging. Obviously, digraphs can be more challenging, but that familiarity again, just seeing it, you know, just having seen it can be so helpful.
Yeah, it can be really, really helpful. And again, it's how far you want to go with your class. So let's have a look at our core resources. And I mentioned earlier the teacher's book, which, if you are not terribly familiar with the whole program, is a great way for you to understand. The introduction has a lot of information that can help you understand the foundation knowledge that is used within the program. And also the program will, the book will make you very familiar with the process of doing a lesson. Now, remember, I'm talking about older children, but as a practitioner, you may benefit from looking at where we're taking children to in order to dilute that to work with your young children now. And of course, we have the handbook, which again has great activities which are really amplified for young learners, and photocopiable games and resources that can be used. And Caroline, once they're laminated, they last forever, don't they?
Literally, yep, a very, very long time. Quite hardy, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some for 20 years that were laminated.
Yep.
And they've survived many classes. And of course, Jolly Classroom. And the good thing about Jolly Classroom is that you can select in the 3 steps. I would certainly say step 1, if you're a school and you're purchasing the whole program, step 1 is highly beneficial for children when we're doing that multi-sensory approach, where also they might need to have the digital component as well in your planning. So you have a lot of variation on what you want. Now, if we think about phonics in early years, we do need to add reception, because this is phase 1, because it does come under that whole umbrella of what we're teaching young children. So thinking about reception, I'm going to very briefly just wrap up about reception nursery before we move on to our great ideas that we have for you and explaining how you can use your resources. So in reception, what you will find is that we have a more structured approach, and you can see that we have some of the products that we use here. And again, we're looking at how we deliver our lesson so that it meets with the requirements, say in the UK Ofsted, or this might work with your particular curriculum in your country or school. But what we are looking at is structured phonics planning, and also continuing with the multisensory approach. And again, what we realize with using the program is that all children learn in different ways. You know, think about yourself as a learner, and I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat. What kind of learner do you think you are? Are you audio? Are you visual? Do you write notes? Do you prefer music? So pop it in the chat exactly what kind of learner you are. What kind of learner are you, Caroline?
I think that I am oh, that's tricky. I think I'm a visual learner. I like to see things, but potentially physical. You know, if you're up and moving, kinesthetic, I guess. If you're up and moving and working through things, that tends to stick in my mind, certainly, and many children too.
Of course. And this is the most wonderful way to approach it, is that we're delivering one concept, but we're using a lot of different ways and strategies to reach all the children with their different learning styles. So this is why it's very popular with children who are on the SEN or may struggling with that point, or English as a second language. And many children that join in reception may not have done phonics before. So it gives us a good foundation to keep moving. But let's have a look at nursery, because that's what we're about today, looking at nursery. And nursery is more about phonemic awareness. As children are in nursery, we're first starting them off with environmental sounds and listening and developing their awareness to what is being said. It's a big jump, you know, from going from home, just listening to mum and dad, and then going into a classroom, and you've got lots of children talking to you and also a teacher. But in nursery, there may be certain ways that phonics is approached. And you may be able to put in the chat which one resonates with you. So, for example, you may have a phonics program with desired outcomes, meaning that by the end of age or stage, you want them to know all these sounds and demonstrate a way of exemplifying what they know. Also, that you have a set procedure to how the children are learning the sounds, and that may be through games, activities, or certain evaluation games that you have in there. And also we can look at it with the wider curriculum, which is just great, and that's kind of what Caroline will be showing you later, and very popular at the moment in the moment planning, which is a great way for children to become engaged with phonics and their curiosity. So if we think about with desired outcomes, now Caroline, you probably can resonate with this. This is where practitioners really have an idea of what they want children to do, where they want them to be before they go into reception. So it's a very prescribed, structured approach with evaluation and assessment.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, with formal learning settings, there are targets that need to be met. You certainly try hard to meet those targets. So, yeah, you plan away and hope to get to those targets and get all the children to where they need to be.
Hmm. It can be a quite a rigid approach. It can be quite a disappointing approach if we set the benchmark so high, because what we know is that a child at 4 may not be the same child at 6. So there's this massive leap of learning that comes along, and that we have to be careful we don't over plan, so that it becomes a very hard challenge for the children. But then we have children who have exposure to sounds, and they use the wider curriculum. And we'll be looking at this, is how you can involve sounds in your planning that are less structured and may fit with an activity. And it's a gentle approach where we're scaffolding letter sounds through stories and activities as opportunities arise. And that's quite a nice one, and that's favoured by quite a lot of early years practitioners. However, they will have a loose idea of where they want to be at the end of the academic year or the nursery year. Because you remember, some children go to nursery every day except for the holidays, national holidays. They have a proper school year, and other ones it may be the academic year. So we've got to be mindful of just what you want children to learn. And one of my favorite methodologies is the in the moment planning. And this is a child-centered approach. And I love the fact that the method involves observing children and responding to the moment of teaching. And so that if a child is doing something with, for example, trucks or fire engines, you use that moment of curiosity to bring in the phonic sound. So say like we were doing a truck, child is really engaged. Look for that wow moment where we can say, yeah, it's a truck. Can you say that truck? So it's a really focused moment where the child is engaged with the activity. They are optimum learning, and we're helping them with something else, expanding that curiosity and also that desire to learn and making connections. And that's what you'll notice with the bumper book, is that Caroline and Sarah have worked that the child is constantly making connections with their learning. But again, this takes skill. And in order to do this really well, you've got to have the foundation knowledge in place. It's a bit like making a cake, isn't it, Caroline? You've got to know all the ingredients, and you may not put them all in at the right time, but you know you're going to get there with a cake.
Absolutely. And you know, it's such a blessing in early years to have that freedom. A child brings something in and you can roll with that, you can go with that and structure your next half an hour around what they've brought in, bring the phonics into it. You know, as you go up the ages, it's harder because things are more structured. But at early years, how wonderful that you have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, and I love that wow moment where suddenly it all makes sense. It all makes sense, which is lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a big question we often get asked is, we use Jolly Phonics in the school. Can we use the same resources in early years? Yes, you can to some degree. The wall freeze is a great way for children to have that visual cue in their environment. Now, it comes in strips of 7, and some nurseries do cut them down into single tiles so that it's not overwhelming for the child. And they put up a tile every time that they have done a sound. Again, this is a great way for children to make connections with their exposure to the grapheme, the letter shape, and also might go up to the wall and do some finger tracking. There may be some curiosity with the beautiful illustrations that are there. And also, you can extend this into multi-sensory activities that we have been talking about. Can you use the songs? Now, I would say sparingly, because if your children are in a setting where they move on up to reception and they're going to be doing the Jolly Phonics program, they will be doing the songs, and we don't want them to have song fatigue, do we, Caroline? Which can often happen.
No, no. I mean, we did. Sarah wanted to include the song lyrics in the bumper book. So if you've got the bumper book, you will notice that the song lyrics are in there if you would like to play the song. But yeah, not overload. We don't want them learning it off by heart or anything like that, because that comes a bit later. But nice to maybe just to hear it.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have a 2.5-year-old grandson who immediately responds to hearing the songs. But again, if you're in a school, that's one thing that we have heard from schools is don't overdo it in early years. And also Jolly Classroom is a great way for you to revise the sounds using step one. It's visual, children are centered. And it's a centered moment. It's not a free moment. It's where you are having them on the carpet. And it's that 5 minutes of revision where you can do the sounds, they can see the shape, and they can make that connection and even do the air letter if they're able to. And we continue on with you yourself. Our teachers make great multisensory activities, and it's amazing the imagination, and also this ties in with recycling and other areas of their planning, and it's such a wonderful thing to see. Now I'm just going to check the hands up. We have someone who has a question. And do we have a question, Kiriaki? I think I've seen a question. And okay, so you're informing me of the age groups, and some people are using the
Yes, Yvonne, sorry, we have a really interesting question.
Yes.
So basically is how early can we actually start the Jolly Phonics?
Okay, well, Jolly Phonics is highly adaptable. And if you're listening to this, you have a keen interest maybe with early years children who can use the program, as we have said, but in a more distilled way. We're going to be looking at the bumper book, and the bumper book now, we're going to move on to that now, will explore how you can do the sounds. What I would say is with very young children, the resources, we have the workbook and we have the pupils book that are getting children on their journey to do Jolly Phonics. But it may be ambitious to use these resources with very young children who are still mastering how to mark make and having their curiosity. So some of the activities we're going to show you now from the bumper book, well, actually, they're in the prescribed order of the program, but are an excellent exposure to young children to start their phonics journey. There are other resources available like Jolly English to support children, and that is in 2 levels, but we're not going to talk about that today. We can do another webinar on that. But I'm keen for Caroline to share her knowledge about the bumper book. So let's have a look. Now, I'm going to ask you to pay attention, because at the end, I'm going to ask a question, and the people who can answer this question will get, I think we've got about 5 books that we can give away for free. So let's have a look at the bumper book. And Caroline, this really is a superb book, full and packed with so many ideas. And as you can see, there's 164 pages. And first of all, I'm going to ask you is, did you try out all of these ideas before you put them in the book?
Yvonne, I'll be truthful with you. This book really comes from years and years of teaching experience. And my first job was in a nursery, actually. When I was 18 years old, I got a part-time job in a nursery. So many, many years of working with nursery children, and then working in Key Stage 1. And yeah, all of the activities have been done. You will notice that there's lots of photographs of craft and things in there. Every single one of those was made by my own fair hands or by my children. This was done during lockdown, so we literally made everything ourselves. So yes, tried and tested, I think you could safely say. And Yvonne, I just noticed in the chat that Amelia asked, is there a resource bank for multisensory and kinesthetic activities? Well, this is what I see the bumper book as. It's a bit of a resource bank. The working title for this book, I'll tell you a little secret. It was first of all going to be the scrapbook. And that was Sarah's idea. And it was the idea of bringing together loads and loads and loads of ideas in one place. And although we changed the name of it, you can see by the design that I laid out in the end that it's very much a scrapbook theme. So loads and loads of ideas almost pinned onto a board. And the idea is not so much that you do everything. You don't need to do everything. You certainly don't have to do everything. You pick what suits you. You pick what suits you and your children and the environment that you're in. And what works for you. And if certain things you don't fancy doing, you might look at something and think, oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, you don't have to, because there's so many other ideas in there to choose from.
Yeah, and I know Sarah Wernham, the co-author, is very passionate about early years, about getting the right infrastructure in for children, and that we lead them in safely to the Jolly Phonics program, in that we're not oversaturating them with too much information. But as I've mentioned, that we have that natural curiosity, which comes from arts and crafts, and also them making connections, which is hugely important. So, Caroline, we've picked a couple of pages for you to expand on. And, this is just an overview here of one of the pages, so you can see continuing that really fresh approach where lots of ideas are on there. And one thing I would say is that Caroline has mentioned that you don't have to follow these verbatim. One idea that she has in there may spark you to do something similar or along the same lines with whatever resources that you have to hand. Isn't that correct, Caroline?
That's exactly it. So, there's word banks, there's images, rhymes, stories, so many things, just potentially just to spark an idea. You might just see a word and think, oh, I know. Sometimes if you want to work on a sound, an initial sound, and we're going to be looking at some P activities, even just, if you're a stressed or very, very busy early years teacher, oh, what words can I use? Well, you don't need to worry because it's all there for you. So you can just dip in and think, and as you say, Yvonne, spark an idea. Yeah.
And it's also an excellent resource for your planning. So if you're saying, well, we're going to do these many sounds in the first term, you can then construct around those sounds. Well, what are we going to do for social and emotional learning? There may be an activity I can connect with that and also go back to my initial letter sound. What can I use with math? There's like 3 pegs there. We could be looking at colors, core colors, and also math connections for the curriculum. And so it's looking at the pure use of this, which is initial sound exposure, or really amplifying it out so that it's great for young children to make connections in such a big way. So, Caroline,
Yeah.
I'm handing over to you now. We've got we've got several pages. So maybe you'd like to just talk through 1 or 2 ideas that we have on this page.
Yes, we'll do. So if I just explain for those who don't have, and actually somebody just said, I find the bumper book a treasure trove. So thank you. That's just a lovely thing to say. There are 4 pages, so 2 spreads for each letter sound. So as I say, plenty of ideas. So this is what you're looking at here is the first spread for P, and we've gone with, if you look at, in the middle of that left-hand side, you've got make party decorations. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind when I look at that is how brilliantly you can tie that in with learning your shapes. Well, when children are learning their shapes, because you've got triangles there, you've got circles, and you've got, so the spiral streamers there, perfect. You just start with, say, a paper plate, a round paper plate, a circle, and you draw some pencil lines around from the outside going into the middle. And then children can use their hand-eye coordination and practice their cutting skills to cut around that pencil line going inside the paper plate, and it becomes a snake or a spiral. So you can tie in, and this is what we're talking about making connections with cross-curricular activities. So I would, if that was me, I would be thinking, okay, in my lesson about shapes and talking about shapes, we'll talk about party and make lots of party decorations. Obviously, you can tie that in as well if any of the children in your class have a birthday. That might be a nice thing to do on that particular day. You'll see bottom left, plum cake. Now, all of the recipes in this bumper book were actually written by my dad. Can you believe it? My dad's a chef. So all of the recipes, you've got a little bit of a cookbook here as well, because they're all unique recipes that you won't find anywhere else. So it's a little bit of a bonus for you. But we do know that obviously children love to bake, love to cook, just getting their hands into bowls and being messy. And if you don't mind that in your room, in your classroom, then a little bit of baking is just such a treat for children. So you've got a little bit of a recipe there that you can use if you would like to. Paint your portrait, two p sounds there. Now you can get children to sit opposite each other and paint each other's portraits, which is a lovely sort of group activity that you can do, or duo activity, or they can look in mirrors, paint themselves, which is always fun. And obviously when you're doing that and you're looking at the paints and the colours, or take the opportunity. Are you using any colours that start with pink, purple? Always try to bring those things in if you can. It's just accidental learning almost. So you're just using those opportunities to bring all those p sounds in. And we are focusing on initial sounds all the time.
I really like that peacock there with the feathers.
Got your eye on the peacock.
Yeah, I really like the peacock, and I love the fact that it's an opportunity to talk about colours, texture, because the texture,
Absolutely.
and also the face, because we've got the eyes and the beak. And I'm going to ask, the people who are out there are watching, if you didn't have feathers, or if you wanted to try this activity, what else would you use? What else could you use? Because some schools may find it very hard to find bundles of feathers, or they might be quite expensive to fit your early years budget. So looking at this beautiful peacock, which is a great way to practice the P, can anyone think about how you could do this activity using something else or extend it? Let's have a look in the chat and see if anyone can come up with ideas. And you're fabulous early years teachers, so I'm pretty sure some of you got some idea. Finger paint, popsicle sticks, paper, pink paper, purple paper. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Great ideas coming through there. Colourful cutout, paint sound purr. You could do lots of little purrs on there. So wow, we've got some great teachers here today, Caroline.
yeah, we have. That's fabulous. And that's a good example of taking an activity and adapting it to suit your needs. If you can't get feathers, that's okay. I mean, you could even pick up some leaves and paint the backs of them and print them, and we'll have some printing also.
That is a lovely idea, leaves, printing leaves. Isn't that a lovely multi-sensory but also tactile type of activity to support this? I love the fact someone said you can use crepe paper and dry leaves, balloons, leaves, glitter. Oh, the children like a sprinkle of glitter, don't they? We have
I love glitter, and I love the fact that you can now get biodegradable glitter as well. So there was a time when glitter was frowned upon, but it doesn't need to be frowned upon anymore.
Yeah, and for many children, it's the only opportunity they get to have a lot of these activities in their setting, because parents are really busy, and we understand the stresses as well. So providing these type of activities like colourful sand, bubble wrap papers. Wow, Caroline, this is the cotton wool bods. Oh, this is lovely. Such great ideas to support this one activity. So as Caroline was saying, the idea is there, but you can go with it to fit your dynamic and whatever resources you have. Cereals. Wow. Look at this, Caroline. And also it extends into so many other areas of the curriculum and language, using language, pasta, lovely, yarn. So this is a great way, and I hope the inspiration has come from you. Caroline has given you the kind of like the template. And as we've seen now, you've all looked at this, and what a great way to practice the P sound. Just with these little ideas on here. I'm going to move on to the next page because it gets better, doesn't it, Caroline? It gets just gets
Even
better.
better. Can I, before you move, Yvonne? Oh, sorry. I just wanted to draw the attention to the pirate ship in the middle there,
Oh,
on the
yes.
right-hand side, because that's a really lovely cross-curricular activity with your science. Floating and sinking, which is obviously most nurseries have a water tray at some point. And it's nice to use that for a little bit of science, what floats and what sinks, and getting the children to bring lots of stuff from home, just recycling empty packages, nothing that costs any money at all. Let's bring it in, let's see what floats and let's see what sinks, and then let's make a pirate ship from the things that float. Lovely idea.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to cost anything.
And children love the idea of a pirate, don't they? They
Oh,
can
yes.
connect it. You can connect it to so many stories as well. It's just lovely. I really like that concept of floating and sinking, because that's a wow moment for children when they suddenly realize that something that's on the top of the water can actually get to the bottom if you put enough things on it. So that's lovely.
Yeah, and obviously with your puff sounds, you can still bring that in. You know, a pebble will sink,
Mm,
polystyrene will float. Just
yeah,
still bringing in those puff sounds.
good
As you,
sound.
yeah.
And moving on to another page that just reinforces some of the we can see here that, gosh, there's even more ideas. And Caroline, would you like to pick out one or two to share?
Yes, so we've got pipe cleaners, which are very popular in nurseries. But they're lovely because I love pipe cleaners because children can pretty much mold them, do anything they like with them. I love activities that anyone can do. So it doesn't matter if you're really good with your hands or whether you're still learning and you're not very dexterous. You can still use those pipe cleaners and make anything you like, and the teacher can still say, oh, fantastic, well done, you've had a good go there. So pipe cleaner people. And while the children are again coming back to their shapes, so a round head there, you've got a circle head, you've got a triangle skirt there. But while they're molding those, you can talk about people who are important to them, people who they can trust in their lives, people who help them. That's always a nice talking activity. So I like to think of the activities as being a sparking conversation as well, and talking skills and listening skills with the children. That's really, really important. So I really like that one. And then you've got obviously more printing, potato printing. It's a classic, isn't it? A classic in early years. But you can't go wrong with potato printing. And pebble painting as well, which has become very popular. I think it's quite trendy these days to paint pebbles. And what's lovely is that you can paint pebbles and then leave them around the school grounds or even on your walk home for somebody else to find, which is a really lovely idea as well. So I think that's quite popular.
And I remember with the potatoes, Caroline, is
Yeah.
that some children are like, wow, when they find out their chips or their packet of crisps actually comes from a roundish kind of vegetable that has a brown skin.
Yeah, amazing.
I didn't know, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then we've got, now there is, again, for every letter sound, there is another listening skill activity to do with music, which I think is very, very important for children. And I think what we've certainly in the UK, what we've noticed is that the arts have been squeezed out a little bit as children get older, and that's tragic in my opinion. So you will find in the bumper book for these early years children, there's plenty of drama, role play, and music activities for the children, which I think is really important. So we've got here, listen to piano music, and how lovely to, now there's some suggestions there of things that children might enjoy. You might think, oh, piano music, yeah, lovely, but I don't know what on earth to pick. So that's why there's some suggestions for you, and you'll find that throughout the bumper book, things that might be good for the children to hear. So you can find those on YouTube. Everything that's been chosen as a suggestion, you'll be able to find on YouTube from the bumper book.
And also, these are really good little items that could go if you're going to have a letter sound table, where that children have the grapheme, they can see the shape of the letter that could be there on the table, and they can feel and touch and move around some resources that begin with H. And the letter sound tables really are a lovely multisensory way for children to engage with new items, new vocabulary, and also make connections to the letter sound. So this is really valuable tips. So
sorry, I was just going to say for my children, when they were at nursery, one of their favourite things every Monday would be a different letter sound, initial letter sound, and they had to bring something from home that started with that letter, and they absolutely loved it. It was so exciting looking around the house trying to find something that began with that letter sound and taking it in to put on the table in the nursery.
Yeah, and as we can see on this page also, there's some tips, as Caroline mentioned earlier, there's some children who are ready for some blending and segmenting, and there's some tips here about making flashcards. We can get the children engaged in making your own flashcards, but we also have, if you are using Jolly Phonics in your school, we do have flashcards that have the sound dots on and also illustrations. Now, thinking about this, looking at these here, I'm looking at the printing here, potato printing. Can you wonderful teachers out there joining us today think of any other ways that we could do printing? We've got potato printing. What else could we use if you didn't have enough potatoes in your class? What kind of ways have you done this in your classroom? And let's check the comment box to see how you're all giving us some ideas here. A leaf, lovely. Thumbprint. Oh gosh, a sponge, onion, bottle lid. Wow. Caroline, this is really wonderful. Foil. Lady's finger. Oh, yes. Very nice doing it with that. Yeah. What else have we got? Lego block printing. How about that ochre painting? So it's all about how you're using what is in your classroom, what can be afforded, cars. And again, although you may not be using the potato, you're still printing. You're still using the apples, bubble wraps, palm, bottle lid. Wow, Caroline, this is really inspirational, isn't it?
I love the palm. That's a great one. Palm, doing handprints and seeing your palm. And that may be a new word for children to introduce to children, which is great. This is your palm. Let's print it.
Yeah, we've got palm leaves, which I should imagine are within your environment, and spring painting. So this is absolutely lovely. And as you can see in the picture, also about making connection to your environment, because on here we've said like a pebble connection, but sometimes in the children's playground area or in their home environment, they may have small pebbles. So it's about engaging with nature and making that connection with the knowledge gap, because sometimes if you teach something in isolation, it doesn't make any sense to children, but this is amazing. So Caroline, I'm going to move on to the next page now because I'm aware of the time. And I love this. I love this one.
Yes, the pom-pom monster there sort of grabbed you, or pom-pom pet, I should call him. Yes. Now, I remember making pom-poms when I was a little girl. I don't know if you did, Yvonne, but it was something that we all used to do when we were very little. It won't suit everybody, but if you've got some children in your early years class who are really into making things, then that's a great one for you, and actually more simple than you might think. So pom pom pet, and then of course name the pom pom pet. Think of names that start with P. You know, what a good monster names, because he looks a bit monsterish to me.
Yeah.
But beginning with P, that's a nice way to stimulate some more P sounds. Along the bottom there, and again, you have this for every letter sound, they're talking cues. So just things to stimulate conversation. Talk about people who help you, talk about your favourite pizza for P. You know, the good debate. Do you put pineapple on pizza? That's a great debate that rages. So you could have a vote on that, couldn't you? And count up the votes and bring a bit of maths into it as well. Lots of cross-curricular ideas there. Talk about your favourite poem. Now, again, I'm a big fan of introducing children to poetry. So you might ask the children to, if they have a favourite poem or they have any sort of poetry books at home or anything like that, would they like to bring one in to show everybody and read a few poems out, which would be lovely. Then you have, and somebody said earlier in the chat, thank you, which is lovely, they really like the story suggestions and they find that quite useful. So if you're doing in your class 1 week, you might want to carefully select some books that have that sound predominantly used. You don't need to make a big deal of it, but the children are just hearing, again, reinforcing that sound. So as you can see, we've got Percy the Park Keeper, that's a classic story, Princess Smarty Pants, Paddington Bear. These are all sort of famous books, quite popular books, I would say. That you can get hold of fairly easily. Again, we went to great pains to check that every single book and suggestion that we made was something you could get hold of relatively easy. I promise, nothing's too rare. There's a drawing suggestion for every letter sound. So at the top right there, you can see look and draw a plant. Pay attention to the shape and pattern of the leaves, which is a nice one again. So just putting a plant down in the middle of the table and asking children to draw it, but pointing out the patterns that they can see on the leaves, which is a nice thing to do. And then collection.
The perfume.
Perfume, yeah. Now I like this one again for descriptive, chat. So, if everybody brought in a perfume bottle from home, and then you just talk about them, don't you? What's the tallest one? Who can find the shortest one? What's the fattest one? Is it heavy? Does it feel light? Is it smooth? I mean, perfume bottles are amazing for that. They're all so different. So you can have a lot of fun with that as well. And then you can see just these little, sorry, Yvonne.
Talking about the bottle shapes and sizes, if
Yeah.
you can't get perfume bottles, there is such a different variety of shapes and sizes of water bottles as well.
This is true.
And as you see in the photograph there, children are doing that activity again with the water, making perfume, making potions, and all kids love that magical moment of making a potion. And there's so many sciences connected to that, which just come naturally, the curiosity with water and filling. So just imagine if you're making a perfume or a potion. That's a lovely idea, Caroline.
Well, I used to do that with petals. You see, so we used to add petals to water and say that we'd made our own perfume. So there you go.
Yeah.
More
Now thinking about the herb table down here, just quickly while we have a few minutes, have you amazing teachers got another idea for a sensory activity? So here we're looking at parsley. Is it parsley, the herb? It's a plant. We've got a plant. So all plants are interesting and curious for children, and we could even look at herbs. You've got parsley. If you couldn't get a plant, what else could you do for a sensory activity? Let's have a look at the chat. Pulses. Ah, that's lovely. Pulses sorted. Pulses sticking. Now that is inspirational because we've got the put there and the children are learning that. That's well done. Yeah. So we are running out of time a little bit, and popcorn. Popcorn. Oh, look at that. Pumpkin squish bag.
Oh, yes, lovely.
That is lovely. Yeah. Pine cone painting. Wow. Pom-poms, yeah. So we are getting a really lovely idea of how you are looking at this amazing resource. And as you can see, as mentioned, we do have the continuity of the letter sound groups and also some fabulous ideas. Now, as I mentioned, we've got 5 bumper books to give away. So Kiriaki, I hope you're keeping an eye on the people who are going to come up with the answer.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, Caroline mentioned an activity where children can see something float or sink. plummet. Can you remember what that activity was? The first 5 people will get a bumper book for free.
Oh my goodness.
So we have Gina, we have Lauren, we have Anika, Zainat, and Amelia. These are the 5 winners of the bumper book.
Well done, well done, well done. And as I say, we always try to have some good giveaways. So it was, if you were listening and paying attention, you would have heard that that was a wonderful activity. And I love the fact that it just was up there and it went. Okay. So we have about 5 minutes for questions. If anyone's got any questions before we close, I'll come out of the sharing so that Caroline and I can talk to you. There we go. So has anyone got any questions they'd like to put in the chat? Okay, how long one sound can be taught? Well, that depends on the ages of your children, and you may have had an indication, as Caroline mentioned, that in some nurseries they do 1 sound a week, which seems about right. Or for some early years practitioners, they may actually say we're just going to do 5 a term. It depends on the pace and the planning of your environment and the ages of the children. Remember, at nursery we have children from the ages of 2 possibly up to the rising 5s. So it depends on what age group they are. Okay, you disconnect. Okay, sorry if we disconnected for a short while. Why UR sound is not part of Jolly Phonics. The sound is actually part of Jolly Phonics, and that comes in much later when children are secure with the initial letter sounds. So if you go on to Jolly Literacy, you will find that we do explore all the alternative sounds more fully. Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for joining us today. And is there a there's lots of questions flashing up. I don't know if you're catching any of them, Caroline. Till what age can Jolly Phonics program be taught? Well, do you know what? I'm sure Caroline and the author Sarah Wernan and myself can tell you that we've probably used it with secondary children and even adults, and just amended the resources to fit their curiosity and interest. So there is no age limit on using Jolly Phonics. It's your knowledge as the teacher knowing what activities suit the age group. And that's why I mentioned the teacher's book will give you all the core information you need to adapt it down to very young learners, but also to children who may be older. And also it's a great way for the pronunciation and also developing reading skills within the decodable readers. There's so much more to it than just letters and their shapes and sounds. And okay, we're not going into how to differentiate curt and curt in this session because it's mainly about early years and we just want them to hear the curt. So we've got a lot of questions that have come through, Caroline.
Yes, it's lovely to see that people are engaging in it and want to find out more. We could go on forever with answering questions, couldn't we?
Unfortunately, we couldn't we, Caroline? We could go on all afternoon with lots of ideas and activities. And someone's asked, where do I get the book? Now, you can hop onto our online shop and Kyriaki will put the link on there where you'll see the whole range of the resources that we have. And, you know, many people start off with the core, and then as they become familiar with the use of resources, add on and add on. But fundamentally, once you have the program up and running, your budget and your wish list can extend to all those other beautiful resources that have been created by the authors, and additionally, the fantastic editorial team that we have at Jolly Learning. So a shout out to the team there who are continually taking these ideas and making them into something real. So we are ready to close, and many of these questions about distribution and packages, etc. for countries, please send to info@jollylearning.co.uk where they can answer those. So thank you very, very much. And Caroline, it was a pleasure and a joy to have you on this webinar, and so much so that you actually worked with Sarah but got the book there and were able to share it. And yeah, I have the bumper book. I have the bumper book. Everyone has their bumper
Me
book.
too. Bible, yeah.
And you know what? It's sometimes I get asked a question, and the bumper book is a great way when, for example, somebody says, how do we incorporate that sound into a maths activity? And I can dip in. So everybody today, thank you so much for joining us. Our next webinar will be at the end of February, and we so look forward to meeting you, and we'll give you more information nearer the time. Kyriaki, do you have anything else to add before we close?
No, it was very informative as always, and we would like to welcome you again at the end of February. So thank you everyone for joining us live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening or afternoon wherever you are. So thank you and bye for now. We're going
Bye.
to close.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.